Hey, what's cracking, everyone? The one true Sir Salty is in the house. Looks like it's that time again, except we're gonna be changing it up a bit. Changing the name, that is. It will no longer be called the 2-hour review, because that's a little confusing apparently. The new and improved review segment, Salty or Sweet. We dive into new games that have launched and abuse the Steam's 2-hour gameplay return window. And then we decide whether the game's salty or sweet. Simple enough? Oh, that's just great. Today we're getting into the follow-up of a classic tabletop turn-based RPG, For the King 2. Brought to you by Iron Oak Games, For the King 2 wastes no time throwing you into a new adventure with a great deal of tutorials.
Oh shit.
Not gonna lie, if you're a new player, you'll probably need it, as this game can be quite tough. If you are a new player, then they are quite the blessing, but for a returning player, it's kind of a nuisance. Thankfully though, there is an options in the gameplay settings where you could turn that off if you want.
Okay.
One of the first things that I did notice about the game is that the UI and heads-up display felt quite a bit different from the first. Maybe not in the best way, but I kinda got used to it over time. The main difference as well is it's not only up to 4 players, up from 3, but as well as it has been tweaked to more of like a grid / movement kind of system for combat. As well as after assembling your party, you may choose some starting items with a point system based on which item you are choosing. It does offer up a bit more diversity, but in the first game you could just choose a different class and you get a bunch of starting items based on the class you were, so I don't see it making too much of a difference in this game. Still pretty neat though. So after rounding out my roster and picking names instead of keeping the really bad default ones, my adventure has begun. Immediately I noticed that they decided to go with a chapter-based campaign, which was pretty neat as these runs tend to go for a really long time, like several hours in fact. So hopefully what that means is that each chapter is a much shorter gameplay experience and you'll be able to kind of progress the story much faster rather than just a really prolonged run. A change that is most welcome for sure. The most integral part of the game revolves around navigating the world map via a hex-based grid. You'll discover many things around the world such as towns, quest objectives, and several random events. Your main objective will always be visible, but your path to there is shrouded waiting to be revealed. It's refreshing that gameplay remains more or less the same as the original. They nailed it the first time, so if it's not broke, don't fix it. Each hero has their turn to explore as they see fit, though you may not want to stray far from one another. Such problems occur like when you are too far away and you won't be able to engage in combat with the main group. Or worst case, you're exploring on your own and end up getting ambushed by 2 or 3 more enemies. That's pretty awful. For better or for worse, this game functions similar to many tabletop games where dice rolls designate everything. You roll to see how much movement you can do in a day, how much damage you're doing, how much you evade, and everything regarding random events. It can be pretty frustrating at times, but you can use your character's focus to guarantee rolls. It may help, but you could also maybe miss all 3 other rolls and have 1 guaranteed, so there's that. Improving your main stats with better gear can help improve your odds, but the early game might feel a little bit punishing when you're not getting the gear that you want. Thankfully, low-level enemies aren't too much to handle, even with bad gear, so grind those fights and gear up fast. The quests and shops in town often supply excellent loot, as well as essential services like healing or removing annoying debuffs. Yeah, I'm looking at you, Poison. Speaking of annoying debuffs, FDK 2 houses a symbol for buffs, debuffs, passives, and immunities. It definitely can be a bit overwhelming at first glance, but fret not. In the menu holds the key to overcoming such sorrow. Behold, the encyclopedia. You love reading to your heart's content? Then look no further. Every drop of information you'll ever need is here. Or you can just search for the exact thing that you're looking for. Party Healer now makes sense. So far the game throws a lot of tutorials and provides all the information you'll ever need, which is great for players of all skill levels. So now we're gonna sink our teeth into some combat, where the game really shines. Enemies spawn frequently on the map, giving you ample time to pick and choose your battles. You don't like that one guy who has plenty of backup? Well, why don't you ambush him? Use your focus in tight spots or when you really want to hit. It's a nice resource, so make sure you're spending it, because if you don't use it, you'll lose it. Combat flows more or less the same as it did before. Speed dictates who comes up first in the turn order, and then you kill things. Well, hopefully. Unless you miss one of your swings on an evasive enemy, that's never fun. The new grid they added is pretty neat too. You get to freely move every turn, and tanks can actually block melee attacks for whoever is behind them, so long as you are having a shield on you. It's a minor change, but a much welcomed one. Also, backline get 5% dodge.
Nice.
After slaying and pretty much doing anything for experience, you'll be granted some levels. They not only increase your health and damage, but you will fully heal from them.
What? Man, that's such a useful tip.
Well, you're welcome. Just make sure you fight this boner. Yep, there's an enemy called Boner.
Gay!
You want to try to balance out your fights on your way to objectives, but you want to do so at a pretty decent pace, as there are complications when you decide to stall out the game and wait, such as corruption, but I didn't get too much of that in my first 2 hours of play. Also, another fun tip is that you can hold down the mouse button in combat to speed up the animations. Another solid tip. Clearing actual camps seems to be one of the most rewarding things you can do, as you often receive chests as rewards. Just be careful, as they can also still be mimics, so either have an identify scroll on, or just roll that luck. And mimics are just as brutal as they were in the last game as well, as they decide to eat your gear and items, never to be seen again. One hilarious detail I noticed was that in combat with any humanoids, they will look towards the character that is just about to die, which is hilarious that they all just turn around and watch their friends die one by one. It's just good fun. My favorite part of this game, bar none, is the dungeons. The game really shines there. Once you start, you gotta fight your way out. You'll often find loot rooms or obstacles that block your way. Please try not to let the door damage you as you try to bash it in. It's definitely a nice reprieve from the overworld, as it tends to slow things down, much like loading before and after fights all the time. The original game did this much more fluently. Regardless, the gameplay is still as solid as ever. The lore store is back, which is the source of your in-between games progression, as you acquire books in your journey and to spend on permanent unlockables like new items, heroes, events, and more importantly, cosmetics. Spend them wisely, or don't. It's up to you. One of my favorite parts of this game is how wacky your character can look with all the gear that they've come up with. An hour in, and both my tank and my archer were all shirtless, both rockin' loincloths. I can't wait to see more. All in all, my first 2 hours were quite enjoyable. I played solo and had 0 issues. I did read the Steam reviews, however, and currently are mixed.
Oh no!
Mostly stemming from online play, it seems, with games freezing or soft locking. But please, do not let that discourage you. Iron Oak tends to their games long after the release. Any issues will be taken care of. So look forward to new game modes to play with your pals, as this game, much like others, is better with friends. Now I just gotta find some. Overall, I will give this game a pretty sweet. Combat is solid. Gameplay generally didn't change much, which is a good thing. Lots of hours of content, and I'm sure there's more on the way. If you're concerned about multiplayer, maybe hold off, but it is on sale currently, so there is that.
What?
And it would be nice if there was, maybe a little less loading in the game. I don't know how they kind of scraped by on the first one and couldn't get around it on the second one. Oh well. So yeah, sweet game, and I'll be keeping it. So thank you for watching the first salty or sweet review. Don't forget to like, subscribe, or comment down below. What did you feel about the game? Were you salty or sweet on it? Let me know. And as always, I will catch you on the next one.